Welcome to the Winners Win podcast, the podcast that highlights awesome people in Kansas City and their secrets to success. I'm your host, Jaime Simpson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of NetStandard right here in Kansas City. At NetStandard, we manage technology so that our clients can focus on growing their business. Today, my guest is Colby Jones. He's the CFO of the Kauffman Center for the Performing Arts. Hi, Colby.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about your many successes, but before we start doing that, I like to ask everybody if they have a memorable failure or a loss that sticks out in your memory.
Well, in high school, I was on the baseball team, and I think 4 years in a row we made it to the championship game every year.
What position did you play?
I was a lefty, so first base, pitcher, outfield. But we made it to the championship game 4 years in a row and lost all four. So never made it past. So that always stuck with me, and it hurt every year. We never made it. One year I think it was my junior year, we had it sewed up and then made several errors out there and let it get away. And it was kind of devastating.
How did it change the pregame talk track year after year? Like, I assume there's like some sort of like...
Yeah, we had the same coach. And
rally cry.
Yeah, just kind of moved past and said, remember how this hurts. I mean, that's what we said every year for the first couple of years. And
like,
remember how this hurts.
Remember how this hurts.
Let's not let it happen again. And then it just...
it's awful.
Yeah, it was terrible.
I did see on the way here on I-35, there's a big revenge sign up in Chiefs colors, which #revenge. So I
I'm really tired of listening about the Bengals. So it's really hard to wait for Sunday. It's going to be that feeling in my stomach, like K-State used to play Nebraska, and it was Nebraska week. That was always a big one for me, and this is starting to feel like that.
I think with the injury, it's going to be an interesting game. Yeah.
We're having barbecue at the Kauffman Center. We do that.
Oh, that's fun.
We do a tailgate before the playoff games where we just order Jack Stack barbecue and all the employees get together and have fun. And so we were on our call because of the snow. We did our management meeting on Teams, and I asked our administrative assistant if she could order some ankle bones that we could do a sacrifice from Jack Stack, maybe do some kind of voodoo thing with the ankle bones, but
that'd be good.
I don't know if we're gonna have those or not.
That'd be good. So do you do that on game day? Like, do y'all come and do it on
we'll
Sunday?
Do it on Friday.
Or you do it Friday before?
We'll do it Friday. Yeah. We call it tailgate, but it's just
I love it.
Barbecue and hanging out, and hopefully we'll keep it good mojo going.
That's a really good idea. I thought about asking everybody to wear red today because of the game on Sunday, and then I decided I haven't done that for the previous games, since I didn't want to mess with the juju, you know, like I'm kind of superstitious about that kind of stuff.
So when we're the number one seed, it's great for the Chiefs, but we lose the week of barbecue because we have the bye, so we don't have barbecue. That's right. So
it's a good
doesn't help us.
You could always have K-State barbecue, or something.
Maybe.
What do K-Staters eat barbecue, or is it more just like corn?
We grow barbecue up there.
Potatoes and
we grow barbecue, cattle, pigs. Yeah.
Good. Well, Colby, tell me a little bit about how you and I know each other. We've worked in our respective roles together for a little while, but for those who do not know you, why don't you talk a little bit about how you got to your role at the Kauffman Center?
Yeah, so I'm CFO at the Kauffman Center for Performing Arts, been there since August of 2019, so coming up on 4 years. Prior to that, out of K-State, I was in accounting and went to Deloitte right out of K-State. So worked downtown for a couple of years for them and thought I was going to be a partner and decided not to be. And moved on to Dairy Farmers America and their internal audit. And then settled down at a smaller CPA firm in Lenexa, Kansas called Acord Cox Company. I was there about 10 years doing audit and then a little bit of tax too.
I don't think I knew that. Acord used to do our SOC audit.
Oh, really?
Previous stops. Yeah.
So while I was there, I started two things. Started doing a lot of nonprofit audits. I'd done a few when I was at Deloitte, but those were larger nonprofits. So there's a lot of smaller nonprofits, and also became really involved with Big Brothers Big Sisters. So I became a big while I was there. And after a couple years of being a big, they asked me to be on one of their boards there at Big Brothers Big Sisters. Everybody needs a treasurer. So CPAs
course.
are the
Yes.
number one choice. So
That's
did
right.
that for their donation center board, which is the clothing business and revenue stream that they have there, work with savers. And then they asked me to be on the large board. So I was on the large board, 10 years too. So really started um, magnifying my nonprofit acumen, if you will.
Yeah.
And during that time, I was still doing nonprofit audits at the small CPA firm too. And then was looking around so I really enjoyed nonprofits. Hadn't worked at one, but really enjoyed being involved with Big Brother Big Sisters and all the audits that I was doing. And so I was on Nonprofit Connect and saw another board that I've been on. I'm a very big fan of Nonprofit Connect. It used to be called Council of Philanthropy back then, but
Yeah,
I did their
yeah.
audit too.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
knew about their job
I know
board.
that group. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people that are looking for nonprofit jobs go to that job board.
Yeah, for sure.
And they had Kansas City Ballet open, and I didn't know anything about ballet, but I did know the treasurer at the time, Jean-Paul Long, and I called him and said, "Do you think the CFO would be a good position for me there?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, you should try it out." So he talked to the executive director, Jeff Bentley, and I got an interview, and it was an exciting time for the ballet because that was right when the Kauffman Center was being built. And the ballet was in a building at that time right across the street where Quixotic is now,
Yes.
just north of Los Tules.
Yeah.
And
Right.
So they were in that building.
Our favorite Mexican place.
Well, I go there all the time. Yeah, Los Tules. That was my first time to go there.
Right.
It was my first day at the Kansas City Ballet. So had many margaritas since then and food there.
Yeah.
But also the ballet was renovating a building down next to Union Station, where
Right.
they are now, the
Right.
Bolander Center. So that was really exciting to do all that stuff, and kind of really opened my eyes. So I learned a lot about ballet, and was on the other side with the Kauffman Center for Performing Arts. Fast forward a little bit, took a job, kind of my dream job at the time, with Big Brothers Big Sisters. So I'd still been involved with them, and they needed a CFO, so I went there and was there for 5 years, and then Paul Schofer called me or emailed me. He's the CEO at the Kauffman Center, and the CFO was moving to Portland, and they were looking for one. So he remembered me from my time at the ballet, so went and talked with him, and he's a great guy, and I mean, I was sold. So, and yeah, so I've been there ever since.
You mentioned that the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, because you'd had such a long relationship with them, I'm sure, as a volunteer and then a board member,
Yes.
was a dream job. Was it hard to leave there to go to
Oh,
Kauffman?
yeah.
Or did you feel like what convinced you to do it?
It was hard, but it was also time.
Yeah.
So I think that was Kauffman Center kind of the next step. I mean, in many ways, but it was a natural progression. And the best part is that I was able to bring in someone, or I recommended someone and her name's Whitney, and she's great as CFO there, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and
Yeah.
So I had recommended to Michael Lawrence, like, you need to interview her, and she was already a big, and they knew her, but I knew she was looking, and I said she'll be great, and she is. She's better than I was there, so I'm really happy. She does a great job with the HR. So at the Kauffman Center and at many nonprofits, the CFO or the head accounting person is also in charge of HR and IT. And I do a better job, I think, with IT than I do HR. But she does a great job with the HR there at Big Brothers.
Do you find that, at least in the CFOs that I work with, it seems like they're either kind of angled one way or the other? Like
Yeah.
in terms of at least enjoying that piece of
Right.
their responsibility.
Right.
Some really enjoy the human resources aspect, and then some really enjoy the technical aspect.
That's
But
exactly
usually
right.
it's not both.
Right.
And that makes sense because you don't really see a lot of people that are both sort of tech nerdy and people
Right.
nerdy,
Right.
I guess. would be
So a lot of
the way to-
CFOs are really good at the, I'll say the benefit side.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
'cause
really
it's pretty
just more
financial.
accounting.
Right.
Right. And you're making sure people get signed up and everything like that. I struggle with more so the kind of the one-on-one counseling and things like that. So we bring in people. We do HR. I mean, it falls under me at the Kauffman Center, but we really do it as a management team. So
Yeah.
everybody's kind of involved. So that helps a lot, and we all just help each other on the HR front. So there's been a lot of it, in the last few years that never experienced. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody learned a lot about HR that we didn't need to do
Right.
5 years ago.
Right.
And we can all point to our pandemic response plans that are written out now that weren't before. And
Exactly.
all those things. In fact, we were just working on our employee handbook at Net Standard, and I had to take a big section out that last year there were like 20 pages of COVID policy. And I'm like, okay, this can all go away
Right.
now. And
Yeah.
so yeah, we're streamlining that again. But yeah. So what do you, having a background as a CPA, obviously you audited across a lot of different types of
Right.
organizations, and you mentioned your aptitude and obviously your years of experience in nonprofit. Is there anything unique to nonprofit? I would think there'd be some unique components to nonprofit finance that are not consistent with maybe a wider general corporate sort of finance. Is that
Yeah.
true?
Yeah, there is. You can really get in some nitty gritty on nonprofit accounting where it's, let's say endowments. I mean, that's a lot different. You know, we'll have an endowment that we might borrow or take a spending policy at 3.5%. A for-profit company doesn't have an endowment. They don't have this big, I mean, they might have cash built up or investments, stuff like that, but they're not using that necessarily for a rainy day. They're using that to just manage risk and to help buy fixed assets, things like that. So that's one thing. There's lots of minutia in nonprofit accounting.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Like temporarily restricted assets, things like that. You don't have that in a for-profit business. And it's kind of, so if you were to give Big Brothers Big Sisters or the Kauffman Center $10,000 and said can only be used for this purpose, the nonprofit has to monitor that and make sure that it was used for that purpose. So we have Open Doors program at the Kauffman Center. So that's to bring kids in to shows, and people will contribute to this open door. So we have to make sure that's specifically only used for that purpose, to pay for buses to bring kids in, for example,
Right.
on field trips or something like that. So you don't have to do that in a for-profit business. So
Yeah, there's
that's
a nuance to how that money gets spent. And
right. So that's a little different. And then, most nonprofits are always doing more with less. So as far as resources, things like that. So that's really difficult, or not difficult, challenging. You just have to, you really watch the pennies a lot more, typically at a nonprofit. The other thing, you have to make sure you're spending it on your programming. So Big Brothers Big Sisters, when I was there, make sure that a large portion you're not spending it all on just fundraising or management costs. You really want to make sure that's going to the ultimate, whatever the program is.
right. Yeah, that makes sense. So Kauffman has had a challenging couple of years. Obviously, they were extremely impacted by the pandemic. And I think last year you really just finally got, sort of to full programming again, right?
Yeah.
So,
Last year was kind of our first, so we operate on a fiscal year, so July 1st to June 30th. And last
Right.
year was really kind of the first where it got back to normal, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
And really, even this past December was our first normal December, because we even had limited programming because of some of the requirements that some of the ballet or the symphony had on who could come to the shows, if they had to be vaccinated or not. Even just a December ago, some kids weren't able to be vaccinated at that point in time, so they weren't able to come to the shows or be in the shows.
yeah.
So December was really our first normal December, which is our biggest month. I mean, we had Nutcracker almost every night, and Symphony's always doing something, rental clients. So December it was great to be back normal.
I bet. We were there a couple of times. My husband and I, we went to pop up at the restaurant, like we
Right.
talked about, and then we saw one of the symphony programs, and it was nice to feel sort of, I guess, normal
Right.
or pre-pandemic or whatever the
Right.
right way to say that is. But I'm sure for you all who really your passion is sharing
Yeah.
those programs with the community, I'm sure it felt really good to be back to.
Yeah, it was hard during the pandemic. I mean, we shut our doors, and as many performing arts or other arts organizations did across the country, Broadway, everybody. And so me and one other guy were going in once a week, and everybody else was pretty much home the whole time. I mean,
Yeah.
a few people had to come in to maintain the building and stuff. We quickly went into cost cutting mode where we didn't lay off any of our staff. All our full-time employees were able to stay employed
Which
the
is
whole
huge,
time.
yeah.
And that was a credit to our board and Mrs. Kauffman that they made that decision to do that, because they could have easily just said, let's slash,
Sure.
let's slash salaries,
Yeah.
let's cut people. We also have a model that we use a lot of contractors. So obviously Net Standard's one of our contractors for IT. Have the same thing for our engineering, same thing for food and beverage.
Right.
All contractors, so it's easy to scale back.
Yep.
If we need to. So that helped out a lot too.
How has that changed? I mean, obviously that was a huge interruption to daily normal. How has that affected how you plan from a financial perspective in future years? Are you holding reserve fund? Are you doing anything differently?
Thankfully, prior to me coming in, Paul Chauffeur, the CEO, so he was previously the CFO. So he thinks like a CFO, and
Yeah.
he's always been very conservative in that respect. And so we had contingency plans in place that he had done models, 5 years ago, let's say. And it's like just different models. What would we do if this happened? And we didn't plan for a pandemic, but we said, if all revenue just dried up, what we do, and kind of had these things in place. So, but yeah, looking for ways to stay conservative. We always try to live within our means. And we have an endowment, but we try not to use it if we don't have to.
Yeah.
So we didn't actually have to take an endowment draw during the
That's impressive.
pandemic, mostly because of the governmental assistance.
I was going to say, you took some of the, right.
PPP, and then
ERTC.
they had shutter, that ERTC, but also the shuttered venue grants.
Right.
That were big for Broadway and all the performing arts across the country. So, yeah, really helped.
That's great. So what's coming for the Kauffman Center this year in 2023? Is there anything?
Well, right now we're in the midst of doing, I just went 2 nights ago to our first National Geographic programming. So we do those.
My husband's really excited about that. We haven't done it yet, but
Yeah.
he saw it. And
Yeah, it's
I'm
great.
sure we'll be there.
So we have 5. We usually do 1 a month, maybe 2 in February or 2 in March, but we have 5 between now and May. And that's really our subscription that we have. The ballet will have their subscriptions, Symphony will have their subscriptions. For the Kauffman Center, we have a lot of performances, but that's really our subscription package that people can purchase.
Yeah. Okay, so we were talking about the National Geographic programming, and you were saying that I think one of the things people may not understand, and I certainly didn't until we started working together, is that the Kauffman Performing Arts Center, is a separate entity in and of itself. I think we think of it as the symphony and the ballet and all of those other entities, but those are actually entities that contract with you for your facility.
That's
right?
correct. So they're rental clients. I mean,
Right.
the Kauffman Center for Performing Arts was really built to house the performances of the ballet, the symphony,
Right.
and the opera, so they could have one place where they were doing their performances. And that was Muriel Kaufman's goal, and Julia Kaufman saw it to fruition. So they pay us rent to come in there, and they get first rights on the dates. So when we do a concert or something like that, we're doing that after we've already locked in the dates, or they've locked in the dates for their performances, so they get first rights. So obviously they're going to take Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays, and then we try to pigeonhole things in between to where those shows are. So,
How many performances do you have in a typical year?
in total, yeah. So 2019 was our biggest year ever prior to the pandemic, and
Sure.
it was around 350. But really, our sweet
That's a
spots, yeah, it was a lot. That
Yeah.
was a hard year, I think. It was a great year, but it was hard, on the staff, because we don't
Oh, I'm sure.
raise and lower our staff based on that. I mean, we can our part-time staff.
Sure. Yeah.
Marketing.
Your
and
hourly
things like
guys.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, our sweet spot's probably 325, somewhere around there to performances. And that's, all things, because we'll have Harriman Jewel come in, their rental client, Kansas City Jazz Orchestra, Storling Dance. So there's a lot.
The schools, I know I've seen school performances there, right?
Yep. Some schools will come in and rent it out, and then some will do their graduations there. So there's all kinds of different
I didn't think about
things
that.
going on.
People were doing their graduations there. That's exciting.
Usually colleges, but like KU Med, things like that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're a big K-State fan, which is
Yes.
fine with me. We can still be friends.
Having a good
It's
year
all
right now.
Yeah,
Right.
you're having a great year.
Yeah.
Couldn't be better.
Football, basketball.
Right? So do you do anything at all still with, do you do any alumni stuff with K-State? Do you do any mentoring of young accountant
I
minds or
I
anything
haven't
like
done
that?
it in a while. Had a couple mentorees and they just kind of went away. They hadn't called me back, but that's okay.
But you're really civic minded. I know you do a
Yes.
lot of things in the community. So you're a centurion right now.
Right now,
Is this
Centurion.
are you
Second
ending
year.
that? So you're almost
Beginning
done.
my second year.
Right.
Yeah. So we just had graduation for the first year just last weekend. So this year I'll be treasurer. Shocker.
Of course. Yes.
Part of the
Sure.
steering committee for that. So yeah, it'll be a busy year with Centurions, but it's great. It's one of the best things I've ever done.
What made you decide to do? I mean, obviously you had been in the community. You grew up in,
Right.
the south part of the city, right?
Right.
So what made you decide to do Centurions? You certainly knew the community pretty well.
Right. I had a lot of friends that had done it and just had lots of people over the years tell me, you should do this. And it just felt like the right time. I'm one of the older ones in there, but, I'm doing it for myself now as opposed to, or I guess for the right reasons. Not that anybody's in there for the wrong reasons, but I'm not worried about a resume or making,
Yeah.
or finding clients or things like that. So it's really just the right time for me to do it. And I compare it to when I was at K-State. I did mortarboard.
Yeah.
That was one of the best things I'd ever done because that was a cross section of all K-State. So you had a lot of the highly driven A personalities that were part of that, but they were not just in the business school, not just my fraternity. It was people across the whole, all disciplines, all
Yeah.
majors, all walks of life there at K-State. So I really got exposed to a lot of great people. And I knew that's how this would be too. And so it's nonprofits, it's for profits, it's ages, ethnicities, all across Kansas City. So it's been one of the best things I've ever done. It exposed me to a lot and continue to be. So really enjoy it.
How big is the cohort? Like how many people are in your
So
group?
the cohort in total, so we have about 40 in each class, so 80.
That's great.
So you're exposed. So we had 40 going out that I know, and there'll be 40 coming in. So you're exposed to about 120 over the 2-year period of people that you can lean on or get to know and, have coffee with, lunch, learn more about their business or just learn more about them. And it's really great.
That's great. Yeah, I was interested in you doing it because I do think of more sort of kind of up and comers kind of
Yeah.
being a part of it because they're building their brand and building their business. And so it's
Yeah.
great that you found an opportunity to be a part of it. There's so many great organizations in Kansas City. There's a lot of great ways to do
Right.
that, but I think it's neat that you've had that experience.
And one of the big things that I wanted to get into too was the service aspect. So I really like volunteering. And my dad was big at volunteering, kind of laid that land for me when I was a kid. And so, I wanted to do that and did a lot of hours, got about 115 hours this last year. So the requirement was 20. So.
Is there anything you've gotten involved in that you wouldn't have expected to like? In volunteering. I mean, because I think I think most of us gravitate towards a certain kind of
Right.
organization or
Right.
based on your interests or whatever, sort of how you're.
Yeah, I don't know about whether that, I didn't think I would like it or not. I did one it was a ride along for, I can't remember the name of it, but it was for taking supplies to homeless people. And it was right before that huge cold snap we had. When it got down to -1 degrees that we had a couple months ago. I think it was before Christmas.
Yeah.
And that was really eye-opening. And I knew it would be, but until you're actually out there handing stuff out and warning them, hey, this is coming, and that one opened my eyes more than probably anything else I had done, and I knew it would. I mean, that's just a different level of volunteering than there's so many different ways. I mean, I'll help at a golf tournament. That's a lot different than helping at that.
That's right.
So
It's more
everyone needs
direct,
volunteers.
yeah.
Right. I do Thelma's Kitchen a lot. I like that a lot. So I'll keep up with that one. I'm trying to find the ones that I would want to keep up with.
Yeah.
Even after, I'm done with Centurions.
So if you weren't Colby Jones, CFO of the Performing Arts Center, what would you be doing?
When I came out of K-State, I went back and a professor suggested I go back and teach a class or come back and interview for it. And I did, and I didn't get the job, and it was probably maybe the right thing. I don't know, but I could see myself being an accounting professor and have several friends that did, or some kind of teacher.
That's cool.
Like that. And
I
if
can
it
see
wasn't
you doing
that,
that.
it would be involved in another nonprofit in some way, shape, or form. I think.
Well, that's going to be great to be sitting there. And, the two things you mentioned are both things that are pretty adjacent to what you do right now. So it means that you picked well
Yeah.
when young Colby decided to do accounting, you did a good job of selecting what was right for
Yeah.
you.
And, I don't really know how I got, I took an accounting class in high school, but that's so much different than accounting. I think I just knew I wanted to do business, but I had a professor that always said accounting was the language of business. So if you knew accounting, you could be in any industry
Yeah.
you want. They all need accountants, and then
Yeah.
you can go from there to whether you're the CEO or whatever you decide to do. Get your foot in the door with accounting. And he's right. Everybody needs accounting.
I had to take accounting at KU, and I remembered I didn't love it, but it made sense to me. Like it was one of those things that the math and the two,
Right.
balancing the two sides, and it made sense to me. But I'm sure it was the professor, but I found it somewhat boring. And I had it
Yeah.
at 8 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays in a big lecture hall, and I literally fell asleep every
Yeah.
class. Not like hard asleep, but I'd be like dozing
Right.
off and trying to keep myself awake. And at the end of the semester, I ended up getting a letter from the professor. It was a big enough class. You had a professor, and then you had
Yeah.
like your TAs or whatever for your breakout. And I got this letter about how I showed an aptitude for accounting, and I should probably consider it as a major. I'm like, dude, you don't know me, but I was the one that was like
Right.
sixth row asleep every week. But
That's how good you were at it.
Oh yeah, I'm so good at
Well, I
it.
was a TA, so I understand. I was sleeping in my class. I remember.
Yeah, and you're right. It's like it's everybody needs a treasurer, and in business with what I do now, it helps that I understand that. Would I want to be a tax accountant?
Right.
Absolutely not. But do I understand? Yeah, I have a basic, understanding. And our daughter, who's an accounting major, who we've talked about before, she loves it. She's like, I could do this all day long. And I'm like, great. Then you found the right thing for you. So hopefully she has a career half as successful as yours.
Yeah, that's just how my mind works. When I worked at that small accounting firm, I just really learned how to analyze accounts, but also just analyze the business. And you think about things logically. So that's the way I look at accounting, is think about things logically, and that's just how it works.
That's
Which
probably why
can be
IT
good or
makes
bad.
sense to you too, is because technology tends to be kind
Right.
of, okay, well, here's the facts, and
Right.
here's the, the human side is a little different in that way.
Yeah, not as numbers are not as touchy feely.
So if you had to leave us with one piece of sage advice about how to become successful like you, then what's your one piece of advice?
Well, first of all, it's funny to hear you say successful, because I don't even, I don't know how to think about being successful. And there's many parts of my life where I don't feel like I am. I like where I'm at, and I feel like I'm in a comfortable spot now and what I need to be doing. And I guess I think everybody defines success differently.
I think so.
Like
I
when
think
I
that's
was
true
like-
too. But you do come across as somebody who just knows you,
Right.
casually. You come across as somebody who's very comfortable in your own skin,
Right.
and you've created a life for yourself that
Which I think that
seems
does-
to be what you want,
And
and
that's kind
that's
of how I
great.
define success. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I guess the advice I would give, and I've told people younger than myself this for years, is just don't say no to things. And there's going to be things you have to say no to. But say yes more than you say no. And that's just trying everything. So when I first got asked to be on that board, my big brother's big sister, it was helpful when I was younger and I didn't have kids or married. And so
Sure.
it's easier to say yes at those times. But continue to say yes throughout your life to different things, because the more you're exposed to things, the more doors that open. You just I look back through my career, and it's just amazing how the string just goes through everything. And you don't ever know where you're going to lead. You don't know where it's going to lead you. The more things you do, the more things you say yes to, just expose you that much more. And it's a better way to live life.
Well, thanks for being with me, Colby. I appreciate you taking
Thank
the
you
time.
for having me. It was an honor.